All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Trino Tuesday that I threw together in like 30 minutes. Jan is literally about to hop on because he had to like rush home to, to join this. But I know that here he is right
Oh,
now. Hey, what's going on, Jan?
not much.
So I'm just telling everybody that we've utterly failed them this week. No. I'm actually, I think that what better of a time to work on this kind of stuff than live and letting everybody kind of see what we have going on. So basically, like we were working last week to kind of play around with a bit of that the Maven archetype. We kind of dived into a couple kind of key things that people need to know about, like if you're not from the Java world or Maven world. The Maven is essentially this build tool, and that you've essentially created this scaffolding project that kind of uses Maven to basically put together a plugin out of the box, right? Essentially, you just kind of create or use this archetype, and Maven will essentially just pull together with a couple of parameters that you give to it in the beginning, a project that you can just run essentially build out this plugin for, and it has a lot of initial testing for you, a lot of the libraries already loaded for you, and you don't have to do a lot of that messy upfront work, right?
Yep. So it's a template that gets that Maven copies for you and just renames all the files and fills in the class names and like all the other places that turns out there's a lot of them. So like if you would be doing this for the first time in your life, that would be a pretty steep learning curve.
Yeah, and so I think the big thing that we're trying to achieve here is to basically remove that learning curve, and the only thing you'll really need to know coming into this will be, not having to know much about Trino internals as much as you would have to just basically set up the archetype itself. So we are going to go in and fix that today, whereas we said we were going to just use it, but rather let's just, so we don't keep pushing it off. Let's just go ahead and take some time this episode to basically dive in the code and fix it. Jan, I was going to ask you, like, do you want me to just do this and you'll kind of overload me and just like tell me what to do, or would you want to just share your screen and we can just, I think it'll be a lot faster turnaround for people if you're not essentially like telling me what to do and kind of running this in. So what's your preference? I mean, I'm for either way. I feel like we'll discuss and dive into way more things, but it will take longer if I'm running the show, or if you do it, it'll be a lot faster turnaround, and we can kind of do a quick summary at the end. I actually think I prefer that one, but whatever you're more comfortable with.
But you're talking about fixing the archetype for the latest version, or
yeah, let's do that. So that way we can just have not necessarily even the latest version of Trino, but we had just a bug that was in there.
Yeah,
So why
sure.
don't we?
Let's try debugging it, and I can give it a try.
Yeah, I think that'll be a lot faster, just because I know that I'll slow things down a little bit with questions and actually probably bring a lot of things to light for some people. But I think let's just work on speed as the option things we're optimizing for this time.
Sure, let me.
And in the meantime, while Jan's pulling that up, there's this really cool new toy that you got, Jan. What was that? What was the toy? And was it specifically for this video game that you've been playing lately?
No. So I finally upgraded my PC, or just bought a new one. And I did manage to buy like GeForce RTX 4090, the most expensive GPU you can buy right now.
How many euros is it right now? How many euros did it set you back?
€2,500.
Whew. And
Roughly.
I'm trying to think, 2,500. Let me translate that to US dollars. Let me see. $2. That's gonna be a little.
I think they match closely. recently.
Pretty closely right now. So yeah, it's about $2,600
Yeah.
in the US dollar. Huh.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
also like bought a expensive CPU and a chassis and even a new monitor so it can handle 4K with 144 hertz.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
this is
remembered
full on
about this.
gamer. Yeah, this is full on gamer like style. Is this for gaming specifically, or do you have other uses for it?
Yeah, I'm not cheating myself. It's only for pleasure.
Yeah, good. Okay. So were you able to? Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I have the project cloned because this is a different computer. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. So
Okay.
I just cloned the project and
You want
it,
to? Can you do some Command plus a little Command plus
oh
zoom
yeah.
in for us?
I'm just gonna make the window smaller so
Oh, there you go. That's
it
much
should be
better.
better.
Yeah, better. Cool.
Yeah, that's a nice trick when sharing a single window that you can just make the window smaller and then it's gonna grow in the video
Yeah.
in the video conference.
And then you don't have to like command minus whenever
Mhm.
you get out of the stream.
Yeah, and
But
it gets scaled up properly. Like so, like every item gets scaled up. Not
yeah,
only the
the
font in the
text.
editor here, but also all the menus.
Yeah, that makes
Cool.
sense.
So we have some issues here. Okay, so I need to build the project. So I usually just build it from. Uh, I run this in my console and I just build it using my
Can you
terminal.
open up the terminal that's in the IDE so
Yeah, let's try this.
that way we can everybody can see what you're doing.
It's not the one. Oh, it is my terminal. So I'm not used to doing this. I just have a separate terminal window open. But
Yeah.
let's try this. Yeah, it has all my history. That's actually pretty nice. So
Isn't
I'm using
it?
the Maven daemon. I highly recommend this for anyone using Maven. And just use
Okay.
Maven daemon. So like you don't use the Maven wrapper, but use the Maven D command that. It's slightly faster and it's running on multiple threads by default, which
Okay.
is also faster if
Nice.
you have a lot of cores. So
Is
we
that
have
something
some.
extra you have to install, or is that just installed automatically
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
install Maven?
You have to install it, and but it's very easy to use. You don't have to configure it. It's basically a drop-in replacement.
Nice.
You might run into some issues when using it, but I haven't run into a lot of issues at all.
Oh, cool.
Sometimes you just have to like stop the daemon, so there's a new argument like Maven stop, and when you run it again, it's just gonna start again. So again, there's a daemon running in the background. That's if you run Maven a lot of times, it doesn't have to warm up the JVM, so
Yeah.
it starts up a little bit faster than usual, and then it can use all the JVM tricks with caching classes or like the JIT compiler or whatever.
Oh,
So
nice.
it builds the project faster on successful runs. So that's the
Gotcha.
gain.
So I think last time we excluded the JDBC as a first kind of go.
Yep.
That we were so that was the first thing, but then there was another problem that I think we'll run into once we exclude that.
Yeah, so I don't know why I opened that using Vim.
Because you were on a terminal.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's what we all do when we're in a terminal.
I'm used to doing this in my other term. So I only use IntelliJ to work with Java code. I use Vim for everything else, like including XML files. Like if I need to edit a POM file, I'm just going to use Vim.
Yeah, I do all my Pythoning in Vim. I do my bashing in Vim.
Yep.
But Java definitely is one of those that it just feels a lot more natural and smoother in an IDE.
So I can talk a little bit more about what I'm doing. The reason I have to disable this example JDBC module is that the whole approach here, which was this archetype, this project, it doesn't actually contain the archetype. The archetype gets built from those two existing projects, and those are like real functioning example Trino plugins that you can build on their own. And this approach was recommended to me by Martin and David from Trino project. And it's much easier to maintain them if I have a working project that I can like just open up here and see all the classes and everything builds, and this is like an actual code that can, like, it passes all the checks and all the tests. And the trick that's used here is that I have a archetype builder project that takes those projects and does some find and replace to like change the class, like build a template from an actual project. So it's like everything is a two-step process. I first build the template, and that's my archetype, and then I can use the archetype to build different projects. So yeah, I'm doing templating twice, basically.
Yeah. Two layers of templating.
Yeah. So
Nice.
the builder is a little bit more complex because it has like multiple steps on its own to do the proper templating of all the parts of those projects, like the Java codes, the POM file. There's a lot of nice to have things like a Docker file, a GitHub workflow, all of that. So like there are some nuances around it. So the builder is a little bit more complex because of this. But maintaining this is a lot easier because if I'm going to update Trino in any of those projects and it's going to fail to build because there would be some backward incompatible changes like in the SPI, it's much easier for me to find the error, fix it in the example project, and then just build a new archetype because like I can use the IDE to do the completion and show me all the errors and tell me what's wrong, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then it's actually a live project, right? And then you're not having to do all the.
So it did build successfully. I don't know. I don't remember what
we hit before. Had. May have been me.
Yeah. So wait. Okay. So I did run Maven package. Let's try. Oh, maybe that was an issue with the Maven wrapper you used.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe it's a different version. So I'm gonna try to reproduce it later. But so far, so I didn't like. What do you want
maybe you
to
can.
do?
Why don't? Yeah. So the question would be: do you want to try to fix? I wanted to fix our sub thing and make sure we can get to a working build, and then after that, why don't we try? Like, do you think the JDBC fix is like a small testing weird testing issue?
So yeah, I mean that's going to be a little bit of more work. So initially, I only had this Trino example plugin here. And the archetype builder takes the example plugin and builds an archetype for a generic Trino plugin.
Yeah.
I started adding this example JDBC project here to have a second archetype for building a more specific plugins like JDBC based connectors. It's just going to be a different archetype, a second archetype. So I just dropped in the project here and added it to the root module and hoping that it's going to build. I haven't figured out how I'm going to create a second archetype, or I mean, I don't really remember where I left off with that. So we need to, there's an error when I run install.
Let's, okay. So let's see if we can solve that one then first.
Yeah, so that's weird because packaged worked and install is just a single additional step. So that's surprising that it failed. So let's try to find the error. So finding an error in Maven logs is a little bit tricky, especially here because when the archetype gets built, it executes tests and those tests are actually trying to use the archetype and build another project using it just to see, and then they run tests in that final project. So like it's very nested.
Yeah. But does it swallow a lot of the exceptions then?
No, it prints them here, but like you can see, we have Maven errors that are wrapped as info from another invocation of Maven.
Yeah,
so like
got it.
We
okay.
have a Maven plugin that's calling Maven, basically. It's a little bit complex, but it gives us a very good coverage. If I would break anything, I'm like we notice this immediately. Like in this case right now. So we're not gonna delegate handling those errors later to a later stage. That would just make it harder. Okay, so we have an error. It's reporting some error in a POM file with after running the basic integration test in the archetype. So I'm just looking for a more specific error message. Oh, okay. So it's complaining about. Oh, yeah, I remember now. This is exactly what we've seen a week ago.
Yep. Yeah.
So we have two different classes. I mean, we have two classes using the same class name under different packages, and so this package looks like the example I have in the actual plugin, in the base plugin that we use to create the archetype.
Yeah.
The other one looks like the package name that's used in integration tests. I know because I don't remember it very well, but I figured that from the package name because it has IT in it, so that means integration tests. We can verify that in a moment, but I'm just gonna take a look in the example plugin to verify the first class. So the name some connector is suspicious because this has example connector.
Yeah.
So it's not using this.
Do you know? So can you do Command Shift Space and just search? Should have a.
I mean, I know that those maybe my keyboard is not working. I have this connected via Command Shift.
Space.
So
and so just so you're aware, Jan, we don't see the pop-up, but because you're only showing your screen. But so if you are typing something in there, just so basically there's a search bar that probably showed up for Jan, and he's able to then search specifically those classes and find them quicker in the IDE.
Yeah, I can't share my whole screen because
no, don't worry about don't worry about that. We don't need that resolution.
Okay, so I can see that I have two results of that class, and no, those are not source files. Okay, so let me open both of them, so actually everyone can see. Connector plugin, and those are timestamped. Those are some cached files. So now it's only showing me first one. Okay, I have the Java source codes for that. And let me open another one. I need to. So it's searching also in the log files, which is a little bit and showing me results in the wrong order. Okay, so I think those are the two classes that are conflicting, and they look the same because those are very simple classes. So like we're not gonna see anything specific in those files, but I want to inspect those paths, and those are very long paths. Okay, so the test classes. So this is this path is so nested because the archetype gets built. The archetype gets built in one of the target directories under a few nested directories, and then it has the final project generated from this archetype even deeper under the same path. So it's kind of hard to figure out initially. I'm just wondering, can I show this path in some tree? Do you know a shortcut that would focus on this file in the project tree on the left?
I know there's
or maybe I can just
it's been a while since there is a I'm trying to remember the name of the
indexing the target directory.
No, it's I'm trying to remember the name of that subversion. It's been a while since I played around in IDE for that particular view. There's like a view where it does that class view.
Yeah, but this might not work because if it's not indexing the target directory because it's like a temporary build directory. There it is. So yeah, it's archetype builder target Trino. So it's the main one. No, archetype builder target. Trino example plugin. Yeah, generated sources. Yeah, so it's running. It's copying the builder copies the project here into the target directory, and then runs a different archetype plugin that's generating the actual archetype in the generated sources directory, and it's gonna have it's generates archetype target. Yeah, another target. So it's very deeply nested.
Wow.
But yeah, that's actually what we want to do. Test classes. Oh, well, okay. So test class, because it's also compiled. Okay, so first one somewhere here. Yep. Let me just.
I still am confused though. If they're under a different package, I don't imagine why that would cause the name conflict.
We probably may. Oh, I think I know what's wrong. We probably should run clean install. That might be a caveat with using the archetype, because it's creating so many
like cache things.
Yeah, I mean, like a staging file that when you run it twice without cleaning, that might be we might be hitting a known issue with Maven.
The weird part is I was running it from a clean, like I had never run the install before. And actually, no, I had run the install before. Never mind, because I was, and then it failed, and we removed the JDBC, and then I ran it again the second time. So yeah, actually, I had never gone into my first run and was handling that. So okay, maybe that is the case. So can you?
So I just noticed that we have an invalid path here, because it has like both package names in the path. It says it PKG and then IO Trino, which is something we don't want. Like, it doesn't reflect the package name, because it doesn't have the IT package prefix. So I think that's
the issue.
That's what's wrong. So this should not exist. This should not exist in the tree. And I just need to remember or figure out why this gets created. Is it a test, or which test is it? Is it a test, or is it like, which test is it? Is it a test of the archetype, or a test of the? Or is it a test of the archetype builder, or a test of the archetype
JDBC?
itself?
Yeah.
Those are the only possible variants of it. Anyway, maybe let's just try running this with clean, and let's see if we can reproduce the issue.
Yeah.
Because maybe this is not a huge issue. Maybe we don't need to solve this right now. Like, it would be ideal to figure this out, but maybe if we just run it with clean.
I do feel like, though, that either way, though, the namespace, I guess, yeah, it depends on how, like, so that will that clean propagate to both, like, the sub runs of Maven?
Everything, yeah. Like, it's just gonna delete this whole target directory, basically. So it's gonna delete the whole tree.
Okay.
At some point.
I feel like, yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like it may produce the same state. No, is it still gonna have that namespace?
We're gonna see.
Yeah.
So let me check again. Oh, it closed one of the tabs because it deleted one of the files. So we can see that we don't. I mean, we can't see the complete output of Maven right now. This is one of the drawbacks of using the Maven daemon. Because it's running in it's running in parallel.
In threads,
so it's only gonna print everything when some of those jobs are done. We can switch to using the Maven wrapper or just Maven. regular Maven, just to run this in a single thread and see what it's doing step by step. And actually running this with multiple threads might be an issue. Like maybe this is not thread safe. Maybe it's not supposed to work when running parallel. Maybe Maven can't, like, I might have misconfigured one of those the POM and not inform Maven that it's not safe to run this in parallel. I'm not sure if that's possible, but like I don't know Maven that well. So like it's now we can see that what it's doing step by step. It's actually executing Maven, like a nested Maven. So it's I think it's running some tests right now. Yeah, it's running the archetype with some parameters, and then it's running the tests from the project built using the archetype. Oh, so yeah, so you can see the third testing of Maven.
yeah.
But that's actually very important. So that's what we would be doing manually, because like we would, when we're working on the archetype, I would test it manually by creating a project using the archetype and then running tests in the project just to see if it's working correctly.
Yeah. I thought I saw failure.
Yeah, so I guess we were just missing clean.
Oh no, yeah,
so
okay.
That's a lot of explanation for a rather simple thing that's happening.
Okay. So in that case, actually, if we were to hop back on mine, and I'm curious if I use my Maven wrapper, so that for next week, all we need to do is remove the JDBC module, unless you do get it fixed, and then we'll be able to generate. Yeah.
Yep.
Why don't you mind passing me the torch, and let me see if I can run that real fast.
Yep. Let's continue with where we left off.
Yeah. So I think we can, hold on, let me pull it. All this time I was just sitting there watching you just kind of like gaping with my mouth open. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I could have been opening this up. Let me see, Trino SQLite. Okay. So where's hold on. Left, fix, second try. I'm usually.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not multi-threaded. If I'm gonna get distracted on a video call, I'm not gonna be listening very well to what people are saying.
Yeah,
that's why I need a multi-threaded CPU for
your brain. I know.
No, I mean I have this computer that can multi-thread very well, so I don't have to.
Let me see. So I'm going to actually. I remember I was not using this in IDE. Okay, so I'm going to actually use the command line, because for Maven stuff, that's generally what I'm doing. And let me present my screen now for those folks. All right. So now let me see, where am I at? I want to go to the
so I don't use Maven wrapper in the archetype, because I figured that I don't expect any contributors to the archetype, actually, because it's fairly simple, the archetype itself. So like I figured I'm not gonna need the wrapper in it. There's not gonna be a lot of developers working on it, so I can expect other developers, if any, to figure out how to install Maven globally.
Yeah. I think as long as we have that, like that's in the as long as we have that, what's trying to do?
Yeah, just try MVN.
VM without the thing, right? Yeah, okay. And then we'll do clean. Actually, we have it. We can't do that yet, because I gotta do the other thing that we did.
Did you had a older tag checked out? So you
oh yeah, you're right.
Switch to master or main. I'm not sure if I'm using the main branch. I like main better.
I do too. Yeah, you have main. Get check out main. Okay. So I'm on origin main.
The default branch. That's the default branch.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So let's make sure okay. So we're back. We're back to good. Now let's what was I gonna do? Vim And then we're just going to go remove the
JDBC.
JDBC module, just like you did here.
You can, yeah, you could have searched for JDBC. So to finish working on this, like adding another archetype, instead of just adding the JDBC example project, I would need to figure out how to use call the archetype builder again for using passing it a different argument to use a different project as a base to build the template, the archetype.
So that way it actually has like the full, when you're generating the package name, you're actually following the entire directory structure that
yes, and I would need to figure out how to build a new archetype using a different package name for the second archetype. That's the hard part. I want to avoid just copying the whole archetype builder because it's a rather simple project, but copying it would be unnecessary.
Okay. Now, this with us taking out the JDBC submodule, are we not going to be able to do still your simplified JDBC one then?
Yeah, so you're gonna end like the archetype that you're gonna use is gonna build a generic Trino plugin that contains a connector.
Yeah,
because Trino plugins can also contain some authentication systems or other parts of Trino, not only connectors, or just provide UDFs. That's a very common use case for Trino plugins. So you're going to end up with a simple Trino plugin with a basic connector that's returning that has a single table with predefined columns returning a single row. That's the simplest possible connector I could come up with. And to convert it into a JDBC connector, you would have to do some manual operations, like delete a few unnecessary files and use some base classes, like different base classes. The simpler, if you don't want to figure out how to do this, you can actually just do a diff between the generated project and this example JDBC connector I have in the archetype, because I mentioned earlier that it's a functioning project. So like comparing it to another new project, like should show you what you need to change in a new connector to convert it to a JDBC connector.
Okay. Well, I think for the sake of like keeping things pretty simple on like getting it started up, we probably, I mean, we've already generated one without. In fact, actually, we could probably regenerate this one, right?
This is one idea I have. Another idea is to try to rename directories in the archetype, just to make it like force it to use the JDBC connector as the example plugin. Because everything is automated in the archetype, like building of the archetype from the example project is fully automated, and it's not depending on any specific things in the example project. So you could just replace the example project, switch it with the JDBC one, and it's just going to build a new archetype that's going to be creating JDBC based Trino connectors.
Okay. That seems like actually a little more approachable.
Yeah, I mean, it's easier because it's just renaming two directories.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that, or the other thing I want to think of is like when we go through this, I would rather it be the smooth process that we're aiming for, to show them. So I think that actually just kind of going through, figuring out the issues here was I think a good enough one for this week. You know, and so I think just fixing the JDBC part will be, I think, pretty, like if when we get that done, that's when we should, I think, move on and try to actually do this and show people how to run this JDBC one, because that's where it'll be like showcasing the true simplicity there. As much as these would be pretty easy fixes to do if somebody's just dying to get their hands on it right now. If that's the case, then like, I think just reach out to me or Jan if you're like wanting to play around with this right now, because obviously we've teased enough with getting these started. But I think it's going to be a lot faster to just get it done the the way that people will generally be using it moving forward. And then we'll, once a couple things get cleaned up and we have that video done, then we can actually like see about getting that more, if it does get involved or added to Trino, then, even without it being involved in Trino, I think we should just like maybe even just write a blog as a first step and just have that blog be kind of like something that people can go and use. I think that'll be a lot of fun and getting people hands on like what JDBC connector can you come up with, there's just so many of them, right?
Yeah. And I think someone messaged me today in the Trino Slack that they just managed to successfully create a new JDBC connector. It was Trino GT Open.
Nice
variant of the IBM DB2 database. I'm not familiar with that.
Very cool.
Yeah, they ended up with a public GitHub repository with a new Trino JDBC based Trino connector.
Like if you think like a lot of the connectors that I needed to set up when I was in a legacy setup, a lot of them had JDBC interface. And so if you think about like if I'm so most commonly the use cases that I think about Trino for around federation is I want to abstract away some crappy old service or some crappy old database that I don't want to use anymore. And I want it to practically become invisible while it's still part of our SLAs or while it's like, this piece that we can't get rid of due to some constraint. If we can just put some sort of interface on top of that just kind of makes it disappear, virtually for anybody else, then that's like, that makes everybody happy. I think in most cases. And so, so unless somebody's job depends on that, that legacy service, then that person's not happy. But so
I mean, like to be frank, so like you like usually you won't be able to create a totally opaque abstraction over some data source. It's going to be leaky in the sense that the hard part around creating a connector is obviously the data type mapping, but also there's going to be a performance penalty because at the very least a very simple JDBC connector will just be using a single connection. So like this is another problem to solve later on. How to
but like to get you out of the gate, right? Like to get you out of the gate, like, and if it's literally just so I'm using a very anecdotal thing in my head when I'm saying this. So like we had this basically this legacy connector that was like on its way out. We only needed to support it for like another year to 2 years or something like that. And like, we just wanted to like, this thing kept coming back with new issues and new oddities that people would run into because they literally would just like, oh, I ran this JDBC, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden this weird thing happened or failed. We were able to like, just basically, I think it had a REST interface, actually. It didn't have JDBC, but we ended up using Gregor's. Gregor's is like little JD REST, like JD or Trino on REST project. And we just, changed it around a little bit to call this thing. And I think once we had that going, because I think it was the REST thing that kept throwing people off. And they like the REST API that they like showed to you sucked. Like it was really allowed you to do a lot of stupid things. So it wasn't, as I was like, why am I saying this about JDBC? No, it was this REST API that was really bad and it allowed you to do like all this crazy stuff that would get the system into a state that will like make it blow up. So we literally just had this now predefined way to interact with it that was all through SQL, and the connector itself did things in a way that we knew would not mess up the state. And so that literally that Band-Aid, now that by now the service is dead, right? This service no longer is required on the SLA, and whatever customer was using it was like, sorry, our SLA is up. And then like, we got rid of it. Right. And so that was before I left, but I wanted to see this thing get decommissioned, but I'm pretty sure it's dead, unless who knows, maybe there was a very well-paying customer that kept it alive. But at least, for this kind of specific, instance, having Trino literally to just like become the abstraction layer to talk to that thing, it was incredible how that just solved that problem for us. And like building out a connector for that wasn't super hard when we had somebody else's template to work off, and now we're literally streamlining this in a Maven archetype, right? So that's why I think this is like really fun and exciting for people who are like in that situation where they just have this legacy thing, or they want to just hide this database that's not supported
Yeah,
yet.
I heard more stories like that.
Yeah.
I had a very interesting conversation with Grzegorz recently about the Trino REST connector. So the thing I worked a little bit on that to expand it for the GitHub API. So there is a Trino REST GitHub connector for accessing like most of the GitHub endpoints. So this is a nice nice example of a REST API that you can wrap around with SQL. And I implemented, when I was working on that, I initially implemented it as a set of functions, like plain UDFs that were returning an array of rows. Because I couldn't figure out how to do predicate pushdowns in Trino, and the REST API requires the GitHub REST API for most endpoints requires you to pass a page number, so like it's paginated, and you need to fetch data page by page. And some of the endpoints require other parameters, most often this is a repository name and the repository owner. So those are the required predicates, and I couldn't figure it out how to do that in Trino, so I just created functions that accepted those as arguments, and it worked pretty well, except that it was very inconvenient to fetch results page after page, because you just had to call the same function incrementally with
And that's in this, right? That's in this
yes. And if you actually go inside the source, like there's a function you're looking at the base, there's a base package. If you go into the GitHub directory,
okay,
so if you go to the sources, there's a function, the main, there's a function directory, and there are all the functions I'm talking about right now.
Okay.
But after a while, I figured out how to implement predicate pushdown, and I did that, and I ended up with a set of tables instead of functions. When you query them, if you just run a select asterisk from, let's say, issues, you're gonna get an error that you're missing a predicate for the owner and repo columns, and you have to add them, and then it's just gonna start returning issues for you, and it's gonna paginate, iterate over all pages of results. So you don't really have to do that page by page. So it's a nice example of how you can actually improve on a REST API, improve the user experience by hiding some complexities of the API, where all the required parameters are you can use the SQL engine to fetch more records and then just filter out, process them and do some filtering or ordering in a way that's not supported by the backend. So
caching and whatnot. There's all sorts of different things that are implemented in Trino's layer that actually could optimize that. So that's
my
pretty
point
interesting.
is that the API is more strict, and it has more constraints, and all its predicates are defined very very precisely. So if you go to the GitHub API documentation and just see the required parameters for an endpoint, you get a very specific list, and it also lists all the available ordering, which fields you can use for ordering, and it's a lot to digest initially when you're just learning this API, because you can expect that every endpoint will have slight differences. It will have different required parameters, different ordering, different filtering. For when you're filtering in some fields, you can filter by exact values or by ranges, but maybe not all ranges, maybe only like lower than or greater than.
Hmm.
And this is a lot. And when I wrote the connector, now you have a single interface using SQL, which you can just write any predicate you want. And if it's supported by the backend, it's gonna get pushed down. But if it's not, like the connector is just gonna try to fetch all the pages. It might be like in the worst case, it's gonna make a lot of requests and it's gonna fetch a lot of data. But like it moves the responsibility of and the learning curve and the all the challenges of learning the data model you're
The
working with. It
Trino, yeah.
moves it from the user to the
Hmm.
outer of the connector,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is, in
Interesting.
my opinion, which is this is very valuable. So like I'm spending my time codifying this in the connector, so that's
Yeah.
it's easier for anyone using it to write queries.
Yeah, especially if you're getting into like specific, very specific niche business use cases, like this becomes very valuable, right? Because sometimes, you'll try to extend what's an open source, but then like you are like there's a lot of times where you have these kind of one-offs and you're like, this is not necessarily a connector that's going to benefit like the whole like community, but this is literally just something scratching a very specific itch in our company and something we'll have to maintain if we want to keep it going. But like, sometimes those are, again, getting back to like the SLA and making things simpler for the end users so that they're not, like essentially stumbling over the what the API allows them to do, right?
Hmm.
And the other thing I'll tell you about this project was hilarious is that we didn't actually we didn't know where the source code was anymore.
Yeah.
So a lot of the fixes were actually these external pieces that we had to like retrofit on the outside of this like artifact that we had and had no idea where to find the source code from. Was kind of like somebody left and didn't show anybody where that was, and like nobody knew where it was. And so this is like we were tasked, our team, we were like the data team, our platform team, right? We were
Hmm.
tasked to like, nobody owns this. We need somebody to expose this data. So here you go. We just had an artifact and like a little random documentation that somebody wrote like 10 years ago. So it was one of those kind of weird things that you needed a way to kind of showcase it, become the expert in this really crappy like service, and then hope that it dies as quickly as possible so that like
Hmm.
new requirements weren't coming up around it. So yeah, so like there's all sorts of war stories like that, but I think for the general things, right, like even more general, like you have a very specific need that you have in Elasticsearch and it doesn't align with what's going on in the community, you might just need to spin one up yourself real fast
Yep.
just to get things done,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't really have to implement all the feature all the SPI features in a connector. You can make it naive and just
Yeah.
fetch more data than necessary and let the Trino engine do the work.
Yeah, and I brought up this whole GitHub docs just so that we could see how complicated and for anybody that doesn't know how complicated the GitHub API is, and so yeah, being kinder to your users if they have to ever pull GitHub data, you can look at all the cool fancy stuff that Jan did here, and this is under his Trino REST, which he branched off of
Yes.
Gregor's. So this is Gregor's original one. This is the one that we used at our previous company. We literally just copied all of this internally and then just made our own thing on top of this other piece. And just, I don't know what it's where it's at now. We didn't do anything in public for this one, but yeah, it was literally just to scratch this very particular itch that we had at our last company. So yeah, so that was a fun project too. I got to say, like making connectors for like random things that solve real fast business problems. Like we
Hmm.
had full dedicated services to accomplish this. And if you could just literally just instead like if you had Trino already running in your ecosystem, or if it's the first thing that you're like trying to do to replace, like it's a good way to like get things going, at least for the whole Trino thing. And then Trino obviously has like so many other use cases then that you can bounce off there. But if you already have it in there and you're just like, well, we have this Trino compute sitting around, why am I going to reinvent the wheel and like write my own service that has to interact and do all this other crazy stuff? Like I could literally, instead of versioning this entire like complex whole software iteration piece, like I could just iterate on this, you know, kind of more or less like something that I'll try to roughly keep close to the open source if there's already an open source piece that exists. And otherwise, I'll literally just have like, ideally you write something that you really separate the SPI calls very well. And any SPI calls that gets added is usually like, there's very rarely breaking changes in the SPI. I say very rarely. I mean, it's happened before, but so you know, you'll occasionally have to do you know, when you're doing a jump, you will have to kind of make those jumps from time to time, but most of the time it's backwards compatible stuff.
Yeah, and also you might just not be using the SPIs that changed.
Yeah, as well, exactly. So it's like additive, or it's like something in a whole isolated area that you're not even touching right now.
Yeah,
so
there are some very new SPIs that are just evolving and settling down. So
yeah, like all the fault tolerance stuff, right?
I was thinking about the merge SQL merge SPIs that are pretty new. So they were using the like there is a like, it's a new implementation for the update, like the data modification language operations in SQL, like updates, deletes, and inserts. Maybe not. Yeah. Well, yeah. Actually, all three of them, and we have a new SPI that replaces those operations. So it's a breaking change, but some connectors are read only, and they don't implement any of those DML operations. I have a single connector that does implement them because I just wanted to try to see how hard it's going to be to do that, and I did, and now I have to update it for the new API SPIs.
Got it. Oh man, yeah, it's I mean, this type of work is a lot of fun. It can be you know, and the fact that I'm be pretty weird. The fact that you've gone through and done all the work with like the Maven archetype stuff, like it's going to make this even tremendously a lot easier. Like this has been one of the things that a lot of people have been asking for, specifically, like how do we get started so that I can like basically write my own plugins. So I think these next couple ones that we do, these next Trino Tuesdays, where we can actually dive in and show like how fast and quick you can actually run these, will be, I mean, ridiculously helpful for people.
Yep.
I think this has been a long time coming.
We should do a hackathon for creating some, you know, unusual connectors.
Yeah,
I think that's a good choice of
words. Why don't we do this? Why don't we like some very exotic ones? Why don't we start? We'll start out with obviously the SQLite, because if you have a JDBC one that you know about, you can always do that. And then later on, I think we should do the more generic one that you have already, and try to pair that with some other system.
Yeah, or maybe just find some nice public REST API and try to wrap it on that in a connector and show how you can query it using SQL.
Yeah, that sounds great. Do something along those lines, so that people know how to do that. And then let's just. There was this one idea I had, like about creating on a. I wanted to do kind of like a stream of data, like kind of Kafka style. So think about like having a Kafka connector, and I wanted to do something really weird where I was like playing music and having that transcribed to like MIDI output, and then having like running a live query on like me playing guitar, like weird. Like that's when we talk about weird, like I think that's very exotic and weird.
Yep.
You know, like that's kind of the weird I want to get into. Like I don't know if that's. Do you have anything on this kind of?
That sounds great. I mean, I have a long list of ideas for weird connectors.
Yeah, like let's just start. I mean, maybe that's what Trino Tuesday is going to start to become for a while. Is just inventing weird ass connectors that we can figure out.
Yeah.
Because I've always wanted to like figure out a way to bring music into Trino.
Hmm.
Because I'm just a very musical person. I was like, I just want to, we have these capabilities of like reading Pinot data or reading this kind of stuff, and that's like,
So
well, go ahead.
you reminded me. I had this idea. I think I wanted to do this for some like conference presentation,
Yeah.
to create a connector for the Spotify API.
Ah.
Just because a few months ago there was this trend on Twitter where people were sharing. There's an account for sharing weird Spotify lists when people
Oh
just
yeah,
come up
yeah,
with
yeah.
some weird phrases and then
I think we
find
shared that in the
songs matching
Rabbit.
that.
Didn't we share that in Rabbit Random a while back?
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, like it would be fun to try doing this using an SQL query and just
Yeah.
do the lookup part of finding the matching songs
Yeah.
in Spotify.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. So I it definitely when we're talking about music metadata on music is a lot of fun, especially when you start getting into like the titles of the songs and like I mean exactly this idea that you had where it's like or that people have had this trending meme where it's like you're trying to get related songs. I think what is it? Monte Carlo released one about they put together one about being a data engineer, and so there's ones about like something about a schema, something about
Mhm.
dropping or something like that. And so it was all very much like, or the better ones too are like when you're trying to just make a sentence. When you're just like literally like the names of the titles of the songs are a sentence that you would say, or it's like copying out of a book. So like the first like I don't know, Julie, like Romeo, where art thou, Romeo, or something. You might be able to actually like find enough songs where
Yeah.
unique songs where you could actually like write Shakespeare or something. So that'd be an interesting one to dive into. But yeah, let's figure out some weird ones to do. Um, I really want to dive into that because that then we could basically make it a series called like literally Trino on anything. Like that was their tagline for a long time was Presto on anything or Trino on anything. So it's like yeah, like that's the point I wanted to get across with my weird like I want to play some music like right. I want to like literally find like anything that's in the world, model it somehow, and then like
Hmm.
let Trino query it.
Yep.
So, and the real time one feels really cool to me, right? Because then it's like, what could we could watch like a live cast of something like of like a government show or something like or like a like we I well here's a really funny one who's Russia's Putin's going to be doing his talk today. Like, what if we just like had a query running on his live cast, right? Like what I don't know, searching for what I have no idea, but like just weird stuff that you could just like start. There's live casts everywhere, and so
Hmm.
you could just like take anything that's sensational in the news and then just like query it and see what's going on, and see if you could like look for sentiment analysis or something during that. I don't know.
Yeah.
or live. I mean, that's actually a really fun one. Sentiment analysis in the comments section of like any of these like live shows, anything political. Oh man, you would just depending on where it's streaming, you would get like ginormously differentiating sentiment analysis. So,
Hmm.
anyways, a lot of weird stuff we'll figure out over time, I'm sure. But this has been a fun Trino Tuesday. I also want to be clear to people like these Trino Tuesdays are not intended to actually be like very educational. I think it's just to hang out and talk about like weird stuff like this, as well as educational stuff sometimes if we get lucky. But I wanted this to oh man, I'm kind of like splitting up. I wanted this to be, like somewhat educational at times, but that not necessarily always be the point. So just to kind of hang out and chat. So hopefully, people are finding this to some degree fun and or useful. So I think next week though will be a much more useful one if Jan and I can actually fall through. In fact, actually, I'm not even going to pretend like it's me. It's really if Jan gets some time this week, we will be very appreciative to pull that SQLite JDBC connector together. But only if you have time. We know you're super busy.
Just busy playing Cyberpunk.
But that's also very important. Cyberpunk time is has it gotten better, by the way? I'm just curious.
Yeah, definitely it's much better right now. It's very playable. I mean, you can still find some bugs that but maybe some of them you may are not game breaking, because you can just try again, doing something again, but so it's not really that much annoying to throw you off the whole game. But
nice.
Yeah, but it's very enjoyable. I mean, it's a very nice achievement, the whole game. So especially how pretty it looks.
Yeah.
On those ultra settings. I think they even added one step more, so it's ultra plus. So it goes up to 11.
Wow. Yeah. These amps go to 11.
Yes.
Anybody that doesn't know, we should just do you follow Spinal Tap pretty well?
Yes.
Like, if you watch,
Yes.
So anybody that doesn't know the reference there, I mean, maybe you've heard the phrase "let these amps go to 11" or whatever, but it's literally like just talking about these British kind of hair metal rock metal artists that they talk about their racks and their setups and stuff like that. And so the whole goal in that age was to really be edgy and cool, and like you knew so much about music. And so this guy was just like, yeah, I actually got my amp customized so that I could actually turn it up to 11. But isn't that just 10? But you just put the 11 there. He's like, but it goes to 11. These amps go to 11. So he was like very adamant about the fact that it was this custom rig that what was once 10 is now 11. So that's how it works in the gaming industry too. Apparently, these Ultra Plus goes to 11. And how are you running that one now with your new rig?
Yeah, and it's not the most demanding game. I think Metro Exodus is like it reaches higher temperatures on the GPU, which I can actually feel because my whole chassis gets warm. It's producing so much energy. I mean,
you can only do that in the winter time.
Yeah, I'm wondering how it's gonna be like in the summer. Should I get AC installed?
Got to go coolant, man. That way, that coolant looks the coolest, even though it's probably like way less energy efficient and it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run, especially to keep buying more coolant. But it looks way cooler. I feel like I've walked into like future cyberpunk zone when I see somebody have coolant cooling down their system.
But, Yep.
Anyways, all right. Well, let's wrap this up so we don't go too long, and you can go enjoy your night of cyberpunk.
Cool. Thanks.
Cool. All right. Talk to you all later.
See ya.